What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Behind the Door Podcast. I am Brandon Brown, and I'm here with my amazing friend, the one and only Jeremy Hiltz. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to another episode. Super happy to be continuing this journey with you all and talking about things that feel important to us and matter to us, and hopefully they resonate with you too. Today, I think we're just going to talk about, I've been thinking a lot about some things I've been going through recently, and I've been kind of connecting some of the stuff that's happened to me in my reentry to stuff that happened to me when I was incarcerated, and, realizing that one of the biggest things that happens while you're in prison is you lose touch with people, right? Relationships fizzle out, the world keeps going, even though it feels like your world stops when you're inside, and, one of the natural things that happens is relationships just kind of fade away because it's really hard to stay in touch with people. It's really hard to make amends for things you've done. And you come home and you have new relationships, but you have old relationships that you try to rekindle, friendships, family, whatever the case may be. And, one of the things that I've been really thinking about and going through lately is just the struggle of like, how does it look, this pressure to, reconnect with people that you lost touch with when so much has changed, but also, coming home with the trauma of being incarcerated, and some of your new relationships have issues, and how do you kind of get over your abandonment issues and get over the hurts that you felt while you were in prison and not let them kind of hold you hostage and continue to affect you when you're coming home. And, for me, I've been home for almost 3 years now. And for you, Jeremy, you've been home, like 15 years. And I know this is something that we've talked about, and it's been kind of a theme in a few of our episodes about, we talked about loyalty recently. We've talked about, like codependency. We've talked about like all these things. And it's also interesting because since we had those conversations, I've been thinking a lot about codependency and my need to feel like connected to people from my past, and also my difficulty in kind of cutting people off when a relationship no longer serves me, and like where it comes from. And so just one question to kind of open up today is wondering from your perspective, when you came home the last time, how was that journey for you? Like, did you have people in your life that you feel like you lost touch with when you were in prison that you felt like a really strong pull to reconnect with? And like, what was that kind of process and that journey like for you? Or for you, was it just more like, I've got a new life and I'm moving on and I got to, forge ahead with new relationships? Like, what was that process like for you?
I think it was a little it was the last time I got out was different than the first few times, because I had been able to go through the Correctional Recovery Academy, and I received therapy and treatment. And I started understanding what this stuff was, and what I realized is that my stuff wasn't rooted in my codependency and the way I was viewing things was not rooted in it was already there before I went. You know what I mean? And I think for a lot of people, we get out and like that's the last negative experience we had, so we relate all our problems to the carceral system and what happened to us. Well, we were in the carceral system. I think it goes deeper than it's before that, right? Like, I was adopted when I was a kid, and I had abandonment issues long before I ended up in the prison system, right? So those needs and some of the stuff that you were talking about were much prior to the prison system, and that's one of the things that I had to recognize in my own journey, is that my work had to start in childhood, right? Now to go back and deal with all that stuff and then move forward through that, so I could actually see what was what. You know what I mean? Like, you can actually identify where these behaviors and thoughts and feelings are coming from. It's probably before the system. I think the system solidified or validated all these negative things that have happened to me, and like kind of validated the message that I was telling myself that I wasn't worth things and stuff like that. And the system was like this tangible thing that put me in the box that I could look at and go, yeah, this is what it is. I'm in it. You know what I mean? Yeah, like, this is what it is. This is why I'm feeling this way. And it's like tangible evidence that I was needed to be removed from society or whatever it was, right? But the real belief started long before I went to the carceral system.
Yeah, that's like a really good point, because, when I think about like just hearing you talk about stuff that started before you ever experienced your first incarceration, and how going through the system kind of just exacerbates those issues, and like you said, like really validates and solidifies in your mind this idea of like being unworthy of positive, healthy relationships. And hearing you talk about that really makes me realize, because I have identified it, at various moments, that like my abandonment issues definitely started way before I ever went to prison. And part of the reason I went to prison is because of those issues I had from being a young person and feeling abandoned by so many people in my life, so many formative, important relationships that I felt abandoned by. And and then it's interesting because you're talking about how the system kind of solidifies for you this belief that like, I don't deserve to have those relationships. I don't deserve to have people, stick by my side. And in my case, even though I had the most important people, never wavered for even 1 second when I was in prison, right? My family was there every step of the way, and a couple really good friends were there. But at the time when I was in prison, it was almost harder to focus on how grateful I should be, because I was so hyper-focused on all the people that had left me and had abandoned me, right? And it is something that like when you're in that place, when you're in and you have there's no power. The only power to communicate with people you have is like it's dependency, right? Like, I hope you write me a letter. I hope you answer my phone when I call you. I hope that you take the time to drive this 3 hours or 5 hours to come visit. But there's really no way for me to actively reach out and like hold on to a relationship that's important to me, which makes it hurt even more when it fizzles out, because I spent all those years wondering like, oh, if I could only do more, right? If I could be there, if I could show up for people, which then created this like hyper sense of I have to do everything for everybody when I come home, because that's the only way that a relationship will last, is to dive completely head first, even if it's unhealthy. And it's like creating this codependency with people because I'm afraid to continue to lose people, right? Because I have my childhood trauma, I have my trauma from incarceration of all the important relationships that, I didn't get to maintain when I was inside. And I've noticed lately that it's like, it's really caused a cycle in my life of, since I've come home, of like being scared to death of losing people, and like, even when it's somebody who's extremely unhealthy and it's somebody who continuously hurts me. And I'm not even just talking about like intimate relationships. I'm talking about like really solid friendships, family relationships. Like I have this thing where I'm like, I got to give people as many chances as possible, because all I ever wanted when I was in prison was a chance, right? A chance to get a letter, to continue the communication, to grow in my relationship with people, despite the fact that I had been removed from my community and was living in a box. And it's like, it's something that I'm really trying to heal from, you know what I'm saying? And another thing that I just thought of too is when you talk about being in the, Correctional Recovery Academy and going through therapy, that like hit me super hard, because I was in therapy for like a year since I've been home, right? And I felt like I was making some strides, and then life got in the way, and I stopped going to therapy. And like lately I've felt this calling to go back to therapy and start addressing some of these issues that probably do stem from my childhood. And it's like I'm like afraid to do it, you know what I mean? I don't really know why, because I know that I need it. But it makes me think, for you to have that opportunity on the inside in a quality program, probably like really opened up a lot of doors for you mentally and emotionally to come home and be able to recognize those things. And it's like it's not common, right, for people to have quality therapy inside. And then I'm thinking about the distrust that you have with therapists in the system, right? Like, for most people, I never talked to the mental health providers in the prison, because I looked at them as like correctional officers, right? If I tell you something, if I'm having a hard day, I'm going to get in trouble somehow. And I think that's one of the issues I have with like starting therapy, even out here, like really diving into it and making time for it as like a practice of wellness. And so, for you going through that therapy and in that program, your last bid, like how important was that for you even now, 15 years later? Like how much did that set you up for success coming home?
Well, I know that the counselors and the director of the program that I was in was they were very influential in like showing me how my behavior affected other people. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like how I would use anger as a form of control.
Yeah.
And so that was like helpful and that stuff. And they also taught me where it was root. It's not because you've been in prison that this is going on. It's because you have all these other issues, right?
That have been unaddressed.
And another thing, I think I was like sort of in a different place too, because during when I got sentenced, where I got the last time I was in prison, so I was like sort of born into the system, right? I talked about this before, this experience that I had, but in a short way, I was very I was bought into being a convict, you know what I mean? I was bought into the lifestyle. I was bought into like that piece of it, right? And one of the things that where I was strong, like I was like, telling nobody, you know what I mean? That whole, the code, right? And during that sentence, I realized, like one of my co-defendants was somebody that I had been incarcerated with, done a lot of time with, and I thought had the same code, right?
Yeah.
And then he ended up telling me and all this stuff, and then flipped the script. When I got to the prison, I was telling people I was the one that told him, and that he had put a hit on me for some heroin and stuff like that. And I realized at that moment that all this stuff was fake. Like this whole thing is like,
It's not even real.
it's not real. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't hold any weight in any reality where I'm going to be successful. You know what I'm saying? So so I started, and at that point, almost everybody I was associated with, because I was a little different when I was doing time. Like I detached from society. Like I tried to avoid relationships as much as possible. I tried to forget that they're actually happening. And I was just like, I would try to just get in the day-to-day mode. I'm eating, going to the gym. I'm going to try to smuggle some shit out of the kitchen. You know what I mean? Like I was in a mode, and I tried to always. That's how I did my time. I would detach from relationships in the community. You know what I mean? So, with that being said, when that process happened for me, it was like I was almost starting again, right? I was already starting again, but I was also starting again with the understanding that I needed to rebuild. Like I needed to find something different, because what I was doing, I realized it was fake. You know what I mean? So when I got to the program, it was easier for me to engage in that, because I knew that I didn't want to go back, but I wanted something different. You know what I'm saying? I needed something different. I didn't know what that looked like, because this is all I ever known, right? Yeah. One of the things I learned is that like that need, while I was in that program, that need, like, because I did like detach, but I also had the same need that you're talking about, right? It's like connection, like fitting, like all that stuff, right? I wanted to have relationships. And I realized like a lot of the stuff that I was doing was really trying to get rid of that feeling that I had to take care of people. So I had to start asking myself, how much of this doing that I'm doing for other people is about them, or is it about me trying to get rid of this need that I have? You know what I'm saying? Like there's this hurt that I feel about all that abandonment and losing relationships. I don't want to lose another one.
Yeah.
So it was like I always reacted to that feeling of pain of like not having people or people leaving me. So it was like really important for me to understand like it's okay to experience that pain, right? It's okay to set the boundary and experience the pain, because when I try to avoid the pain or make it go away or make it feel better by doing things with other people, I end up paying a much larger price later on. Right? Like that. And then it's like, why? Because all the people around me, like I was referencing it, like I felt like I started to see that it was fake. It's about a drug, or it's about me doing something for you. It's about me smiling. It's transactional, on, right? There was always something I had to do for you in order to maintain the relationship. And what I started to realize is that like, those relationships always crumbled. Always crumbled. It didn't matter how close we were. There was always going to be friction in those relationships. You know what I'm saying? So when I was going through that program, I started to decide that like the people that are going to be in my life, are not gonna necessarily want a whole lot from me other than like to be around me as who I am as a person. You know what I'm saying?
And what support looks like, you know, I'm hearing you talk and thinking just about some of the things I've been through too, is like what supportive friendships look like. It's not transactional like it was for us in the system. It's not what can you give me and what can I return to you or vice versa. It's just like presence. You know what I'm saying? Like, are people there for you? Do they listen to you? Do they, when you're in a moment where you just need to be heard and no need to be spoken to, like, do people give you that space? And also, how do we communicate it is an important thing too, because I find myself a lot of times like talking about my issues and having people tell me all the solutions. And I'm like, I don't want your solutions, right? Like, but I don't have the courage to say, I'm not asking you for advice. I'm just asking you to hear me, because I'm afraid that if I say that, then they're going to get frustrated and then my relationship is going to have tension or it's going to end. And, you know, like this conversation to me feels really important because I do have this deep-seated fear, I've realized, of losing people. You know what I'm saying? Like, even people who are actively hurting me, even people who are not showing up, you know, like I have this thing where I'm like, but they will one day. I just have to do more. I have to be more dependable and more lovable to have that reciprocate.
Yeah, I think when we get into that place, it's like we lose focus on people that like don't are those relationships.
Yeah.
We get so focused on the bad relationships and the people that may leave us, that we totally lose focus on the people that like
that are there
that won't leave us. That's where my gratitude needs to go.
Yeah.
The people aren't gonna leave me. You know what I'm saying? But it's not even like that. They're not gonna leave me. But that I trust them, and and the people that are leaving, and the people are doing things that like might hurt me, or where we're just not like it's just not working out.
Yeah.
The more energy I spend on those folks is the less energy that I'm gonna spend on the people I care about the most.
It's so interesting because like what I'm getting out of this too is like, and then I'm thinking about just the reentry process and the recovery process in general. And like so much of what pulls us back are like these self-fulfilling prophecies, right? And that's what I'm hearing you talk about. And it's like hitting me really close to home because I've had during the last 3 years, like people who I know will be there for me forever, like express to me like, dude, you focus so much on these like harmful relationships and it takes away from ours.
Well, I think it's one of the things that I've made mistakes with in relationships in my life is believing that, like what I heard you just say, like they're not leaving, and think that like it's important for me to understand so that I put in effort into a relationship.
Yeah.
That like the people can and may end up leaving, so a day like this, like in the relationships, and people are not always guaranteed, right? So like if I expressed my gratitude for people that I love and I care about, it's like knowing that like how fragile life in general is, right? You know how easy like not knowing how other people where they're at, like what could happen for them. You know what I'm saying? It's like I have to like stay in today, and like the people that are in front of me and like are with me are the ones that I gotta like express my gratitude for, right? Like it's important for me to tell people I'm grateful for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I'm grateful for them, I want them to know that. You know what I mean? I want to tell them I love them, but like when I'm focused on the negative, it's like I'm missing that mark. You know what I'm saying? I'm missing that maybe that opportunity to express my gratitude in that way, you know what I'm saying? And it's not like I don't have to give money to somebody, or I don't have to do something to prove that to them. But I do feel like it's my job to express my part of the relationship. Gratitude, right? And it's because as much as I want to hear somebody cares about me, I know that they want that same thing, right?
Yeah.
So when I'm focused on like who could potentially leave, or if I say the wrong thing to this person, they might end up leaving. Like, and I'm focused on that.
Yeah.
I'm in that, but it's also that's also a discipline thing, because that like part of me that I'm still trying to heal will tell me that this person is gonna like. Well, that's what it's the voice that starts talking to me that I really need to concentrate on and listen to and dispute. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's almost like we have people in our lives that we're like tethered to, right? That are like our core friendships and relationships, and like we've got that foundation that we've built with them, and like we're tethered to them. But sometimes another relationship comes in, and it's like we unhook the tether from those people to try to hook it to an unhealthy relationship, because we feel like there's such a foundation here that I don't have to be tethered anymore. And that tether is almost like what you're saying. It's that gratitude. It's that communication. It's that openness and willingness and showing up. And it's like like I've done this before where I've taken the tether off my really solid friendships and relationships and attached it to ones that I feel like are important in the moment. Mm-hmm. And what I end up doing is tethering to a person that I'm afraid to lose, just because I'm afraid to lose people in general. And it ends up pulling me further away. Like the tether pulls me further away from the people that I should have always kept the tether on, right? And when you were...
I was thinking about so many times where it would be like, on the holidays when I'm locked up, man, I'm like, oh, doing whatever I'm doing, and like, who is at the table, Christmas dinner table in my spot? Nobody, right? Like I'm missing away from there because of this pull that you're talking about, these other things, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting, man. When I was listening to you talk, it just like randomly brought up for me. I had a really close friend, a little bit ago, send me a like a TikTok, like a reel, and it was this person talking about how like there's 3 types of people that come into our lives, and it was like a metaphor with a tree, right? And some people are leaves, and some people are branches, and then other people are roots. And it talked about like this whole reel was talking about how like the people who are leaves in your life, as soon as a storm comes, as soon as the wind comes, and it blows them right off the branches, right? And it takes them away, and they don't stick around through the turbulence and the wind and the tough times. And other people are branches, right? They stick around through some tough times, but when the wind gets a little bit heavier and when the rain goes a little bit harder, the branches will break off, right? And now they're gone. And then the roots are the people that no matter what goes on in your life are keeping you up. They're holding you up. And I was listening to this reel, and I was thinking about it in the context of my friendship with the person who sent me this. And, I didn't really think more about it until this moment where it's like, it's okay to be okay with all of those things.
Yeah.
It's okay to be all right with the leaves in your life. Like some people are going to blow away, but it doesn't mean that when they were there that they were part of your tree. They were part of your life. They were the leaves. They were the things that, made you feel like alive and beautiful in the moment. And when the leaves blow away, more leaves are going to come, and more leaves are going to blow away, and more leaves are going to come. And the branches.
And I think that like that is one of the most important things, Brandon, is that like the acceptance that like not everybody is meant to be there forever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Not everybody's meant to like that. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to have, 100 people that are roots.
Yeah.
Whole, I'm saying it's too many, you know what I'm saying? And it's like very important, I think, like you said at the time, like the biggest thing, like you're gonna use your time as resources, right? Yeah. So if you spread yourself too thin, you're never gonna feel like you have these like really quality, yeah, right? Because you have too many people on there. You know what I'm saying? And it's like we have to be able to accept that like not everybody is gonna be there forever. And like you think about being in the carceral system, in particular, it's like, you get so, you know what I mean? Like you get so tight with people in some ways because you're like trying to make it through this thing together. They're like, I got your back, no matter what, dog. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to be, you know what I'm saying? And like you're looking for that same type of loyalty.
Yeah.
And then we come out here and we apply that same thing to people in our lives. And it's like, I know for a fact I've really placed these unrealistic expectations on people because of that. You know what I'm saying? Because of what I would do for you, I put these unrealistic expectations on people. You know what I'm saying? And then I go, why aren't you living up to these expectations? But the thing that helps me the most is accepting the fact that like, not everybody is gonna be it, and it's okay. I'm gonna be okay. Like I'm gonna love you if you come back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I don't actually have to be angry, or like it doesn't have to be catastrophic if we lose touch with somebody. You know what I'm saying?
And also, if you don't come back, I'm also going to be okay.
Okay,
And that's, something, and I don't even think that's necessarily just unique to, us as a population, people in recovery and people in reentry and people who are incarcerated. I think that is a human thing, and especially because the way we opened up talking about our childhood trauma and talking about how a lot of these things existed way before our separation from society and relationships. And, people go through that, and it's like there's this deep-seated fear that we have as humans, and especially if you've been through some of the things we've been through, about like the catastrophizing people that leave your life, and what am I going to do without this person because I've invested things in them and they've taken up a bulk of my time. And it's like finding that acceptance of the leaves and the branches, and finding that way to water the roots, right? Because they are the roots, and as long as you have the roots, branches will regrow and leaves will come back in the season, right? And it's interesting because like this like metaphor of the tree is really hitting me hard in this conversation, because it is okay, and it's a part of life to have the people in your life who are leaves and branches, right? You can always still learn something from them about yourself and about relationships and about the world. But if you continue to try to turn leaves into roots, you're not watering the roots, right? If I'm always grabbing the leaf and putting it back on the branch, or grabbing the branch and putting it back on my tree, like you said earlier, that time is taken away from me really nourishing the roots who are holding me up. And it's like, this is really like, I'm like fucking blown away right now, because I've for so long been trying to chase down leaves, where I've been trying to, like, as they're blowing away, I'm trying to grab them, and when they're on the ground, I'm trying to rake them up and like figure out how to put them back on the tree. But they're leaves. It's okay. People come into your life and they're not meant to be there forever. We meet millions of people in the course of our lives, and not everybody is supposed to be a root, right? And at some point, you said this earlier, and I just like, I can't get this metaphor out of my mind. At some point, if you try to have too many roots, it overcrowds the system, and your tree can't grow.
Right, you can't have that many.
And so the roots have to be carefully, selected, and they got to be, tended to. And
it's going to be very hard to be successful in relationships, and if we are not aware of these feelings that we're having, like the fear of people leaving us and how unhealthy that is for us. And then on top of like the anger and the aggression that we sometimes show when that feeling starts coming up for us, you know what I mean? I think if you have a lot of guys add this pressure to themselves and they try to do so much for so many people, and then it's like it stifles us up, because we're always worried about other people. You know what I mean?
It's interesting too, because I've realized that like my fear of losing people and my fear of acknowledging that some people are only here for a season really does come back to my fear of being like inadequate, right? Like if somebody comes into my life and it feels really important and it feels really, like a strong friendship and relationship for a moment, and then they leave my life for whatever reason, right? Whatever the case may be, it's not because I'm not enough. It's because that's just the way that life goes sometimes. And so I find myself when I'm on the verge of losing relationships, or when, I have a relationship that's unhealthy and I know that I got to let it go for my own well-being, this thought creeps in where I'm like, if they go, it's because I didn't do enough, right? If they go, it's because I wasn't enough. I didn't show up enough.
I know this, man. For me, it's been like, I was given up for adoption when I was about a year old, right? And I was the youngest of 3 kids when my mom was 15 years old when she gave birth to me, right? So you think about that. She was a young child herself, and giving birth to kids, right? But like I've been dealing with this from the time I was, young.
Yeah.
It like gets ingrained in us, these feelings, and they become like a part of who we are, and we don't even see them sometimes as unhealthy because we've been dealing with it for so long, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like if there's, I don't know if you ever, you turn the air conditioner off that's been running all summer, and like you get so used to that noise being in the room, and that when you turn it off, it becomes completely silent, right? It's almost the same thing, right? Like you would get so used to feeling this certain way and or being this way that we develop our behaviors around it, right? And like, how do we go? Oh, I've been doing this wrong for all like decades, right? Like, and it's like it's important to have the awareness around it, because we can end up getting stuck in places where we, like I was saying around the adoption, right? Like from the time I was young, I knew that I was different than anybody else. So I had these voices telling me that, like, oh, you're different. Not voices per se, but like a feeling like people didn't like me, and like all. And it's not if you're feeling that when I was in, you know what I mean, in elementary school. You know what I'm saying? And so my life and decision making and behaviors are based off of that from the time. But unless I look at it, because I could go back and go, okay, I can go back and go say, oh, this is from the prison. But it's not. I can remember feeling the same way that I was feeling at 4 years old, at 5 years old. You know what I'm saying? So, like, if we don't acknowledge that and accept it, right, and that, like, it's not about us. These things are not about us. Like, other people's lives and what they do and what they say and how it's all going to go is literally not about us, right? Whether they stay or go, that's not about us, right? It's not, my self-worth isn't based on if you have time for me or not, you know what I mean? That's what I had to learn now, right? Like, that's part of the process, and it takes a while to get there, but we literally have to be willing to walk down that road in order to get well.
It's such an important point to make too, because I find myself when I have people in my life that tell me like, I don't want to chase you around. Like, I know that you're busy and I know you have stuff going on, but like, they're like almost asking for attention from me, like that's about me. That's not about them in a lot of ways, because I am trying to have a million roots too often. And so the same way that I can recognize when somebody says like, I've been trying really hard and I know that you're spread too thin, and I'm the one spreading myself too thin, I'm realizing that like that person is acknowledging like, it's not about me, it's about you. I see your life, I see what's going on, and I don't want to keep like, begging you to feed this relationship and sustain it. But then when the opposite happens, when I'm like asking somebody like, man, what's up? Why can't you show up for me? Like, why don't you care as much for me as I care for you? I'm not saying like, oh, it might be that person, what they have going on in life. I'm internalizing it and saying, why am I not good enough? Right. And
that's the message I got when I was a baby.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's not about that person. Yeah. It's not about that situation. It's like rooted in shit that is deeper than us. And that's like the automatic reaction that's coming out of us. We don't even think about it, right?
Yeah.
Some of us don't even believe that like it's connected to that. Yeah. Right. So like, how can you alleviate that feeling inside yourself if you don't even know where it's coming from?
Yeah. And it really boils down to like a fear, right? And it's some of these fears that are instilled in us from like early childhood, and then the fears that are made worse by incarceration, and then the fears that we carry out into reentry with us. And I've really let fear dictate my life in a lot of ways when it comes to relationships, and when it comes to like, having healthy, connected people in my life. And it's like, it really is a fear of like being inadequate and not being enough. And, it's like, and then that's where the self-fulfilling prophecy comes in, because I'm feeling inadequate, I'm becoming inadequate, because I'm spreading myself too thin, trying to get love from 10,000 people instead of 10.
And so you think about what you just said, right? This is about fear.
Yeah.
Right? And fear boils down to either losing something that you have or not getting something that you want.
Yeah.
Right? And both of those, that's like you can only think about yourself in those scenarios.
Yeah.
Right? So you're spreading yourself too thin, thinking you're doing everything for everybody else, but you're really fearful, which is a selfish emotion. So we're really just thinking about ourselves while you're spreading ourselves too thin, right?
Yeah.
So it's not really about those people.
Yeah.
It's about us, like trying to like run from that feeling.
Yeah.
And what did you say in the beginning? Is like, I'm scared to do these things, right? I'm scared to look at that stuff. Well, we've been programmed to run from that fear this whole time. That's literally what you're talking about. Like, I'm running from it, right? I'm moving away from it. That's why I'm like trying to connect with all these people.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like if we look inside
It
ourselves,
was connecting with ourselves.
we don't have to run to all these people. We don't have to, because we can be accepting of the fact that I'm good enough no matter what decision you make. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like when we see ourselves when we actually fucking see ourselves as the tree, we realize that the branches and the leaves are just a part of us, and they're just a part of life, and they're just something that happens, but it doesn't take away from us being the tree, right?
Well, it's because we don't see ourselves as valuable, right? And this is where the system fails, is that like the system actually has an opportunity to build people up and make them feel valuable and like give them a sense of purpose and a sense of a self-identity. But instead what we do is they go, look, here's your number, here's the same uniform, and here's your jail cell. And we'll see you in however long before you get out.
Here's a shitty ton of rules.
You're getting out, and the whole time you've been in this negative belief that I had about myself when I was a year and a half old.
Solidified.
It's just being, the message is being given to me every day that you are literally what you think you are.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so the system has an opportunity to help change this by not treating people like animals and to be punished literally for the way, like lots of the way that when I committed crimes and when I started using substances, I was doing those things based on the same fear that you're talking about right now. I was trying to get rid of it. I was a young kid and I didn't know how to fucking do that. You know what I'm saying? So I would act out. I would fucking do this. I would try to fit in. Trying to fit in, right? Substance use, drugs, violent crime, all that stuff is going on to try to fit in.
Yeah.
And then the same fear is driving these relationships when we get out.
And you realize that the trying to fit in is actually what pulled you out anyways. And then, like you said, you have those moments where you realize, oh, this is fake anyway. And I've subscribed to it, and I've believed in this whole system of values that actually isn't even rooted in anything real. And,
it's, at one point, my only option was to face it, is to face the fear.
And I think
that's the only play I had left.
And I think that's the message really of today, right? Like that's really the thing that I think we have to take away when we walk out of this room, but also hopefully anybody who's listening has to take away too is, I was actually talking to somebody about this yesterday in a completely different context. We were talking about, like adrenaline and how, cause I love it. Like I'm an adrenaline junkie, right? And, for me, things that I was afraid of when I was young, I overcame the fears by just doing them. So if you're afraid of heights, sometimes you just got to fucking jump out of a plane, right? To realize like, oh, I can survive that. If you're afraid of whatever, sometimes you just got to embrace it and walk through it to teach yourself that this is not actually something I have to be afraid of. And this is a moment for me where this is what I'm taking away from this conversation, and what I hope anybody listening takes away is we do have to heal from the shit that we've been through and the fears that are generated from them, and we have to confront them. And the longer that we keep like feeding the fear by attaching and like almost like love bombing everybody in our life because we want to be enough, finally we want to be validated, the longer that fear lingers. And you just said it best, like you got to a point where the only option you had was to confront the fear and like walk through it. And I think that's really the message of everything we talk about today is like we do have these fears that are established from things we've been through, and the system definitely makes them way worse.
We can also choose our suffering, right?
Yeah.
Because that fear is going to be there. And we could suffer through it indefinitely,
Yeah.
right? For the rest of our lives if we want to, right? Or we can suffer through getting well.
Yeah.
I'm saying, like doing the work there, and then there's an end to it. Maybe I start feeling better. I don't have to look and actually let it dictate my life anymore in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
So like we can actually choose how we're going to suffer through this thing. It's going to be painful no matter what, whether you're working on it or not.
Well, what's the end result?
But the not working on it is going to get me with a needle in my arm, back in the prison system, punching someone in the face. Like all this stuff could have happened to me if I don't like actually suffer through the work that needs to happen in my life. You know what I mean?
And the not suffering through it is going to fuel the self-fulfilling prophecy anyway.
There it is. It's just a perpetuating cycle, and when we can just go like this, it's change the game. I'm just gonna get better. You know what I'm saying? I don't have to actually go back to prison. I don't have to live in the streets. I can rebuild and be on my own, and not actually have to have people in my life that are unhealthy for me. You know what I mean?
And so that's what it's all about, right? Is like choosing the discomfort of stepping into that fear, because knowing that stepping into it is going to be temporary discomfort. And you're going to suffer no matter what, whether you confront it or not. But like you said, I think that's the message, right? Is like stepping into the fear and really walking through it will be uncomfortable for a season, whereas staying away from it and continuing the cycles is going to be uncomfortable for a lifetime. And, you know,
I mean, I want to be clear about this. There's still days that I get stuck
for sure.
in myself where I feel like I get out of bed and I feel like no one loves me or likes me, and it takes hours to get out of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But what I do know now is when I'm feeling that way, I actually don't have to react. I don't have to get angry. I don't have to use drugs. I don't have to shit. And I can tell people around me that, like, yo, this is the way I'm feeling right now. It has nothing to do with you. I'm just trying to get through it. You know what I mean? And that's like important too, to recognize that and let people know where you're at. You know what I mean?
And I can relate to that, because my worst days have actually been when I woke up in the morning and I felt, man, a lot of people really love me and care about me, and I definitely don't deserve it. Right? I feel like I wake up some mornings, I'm like, I'm a fraud. I'm not showing up at my best. And that's where I have to find the acceptance of, like, what my best is today might be different from my best tomorrow. And all I can do is give my best in any day that I'm at. And definitely, you know, what I'm taking away from this conversation is I got to stop chasing down these leaves, man. Like, I got to stop chasing them down. I got to fucking water my roots, dude.
I think my message is that if you listen to this, it's hit you, like, you're actually worth it. You know what I'm saying? You actually have value.
Yeah.
Because in those moments is when we don't feel like we have any value, like we don't look at this, and it's like sometimes I need to be reminded I'm actually a good person. No matter what's happened to me or the decisions I made in the past doesn't mean that I'm not valuable, and I'm not, like, I can't look another. I can look people in the eyes, and I'm like not any more or less important than anybody else. You know what I mean?
And hopefully that is what you take away. If you're listening, take away that, you know, we believe it. So many of us believe that every single person has value, and if you're listening to this, you have value, and hopefully you think there's value in this, and you come back and listen to another one, because we're going to keep having these tough conversations. We're going to keep having these vulnerable moments, and, you know, and just appreciate everybody who's listening. Obviously, I appreciate you, Jeremy, working through this stuff with me, and, you know, hopefully us coming to these realizations will help facilitate other people coming to theirs. So, you know, it's been another episode of Behind the Door, and we appreciate you listening, and we can't wait for you to tune in to the next one.